Yeah, so I flew in yesterday from Minnesota. I left at noon yesterday. I got in at 9 and woke up because I decided it was going to be fun, good idea, around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. So if I fall asleep up here, I do not suffer from narcolepsy, but maybe. Today we're going to talk about open source threat intelligence from a programmatic aspect. And when I say programmatic, I don't necessarily mean on the same level in detail that Andrew gave this morning around threat intelligence. I'm looking at it from a business perspective and being able to answer some of the questions that businesses have around why threat intelligence is important. So a little bit about myself and who I am. I'm originally an Iowa farm boy. I had way too much time on my hands and wound up in this little information security community, which was rather interesting. I am a geek, even though I am a management consultant, which means I'll take your watch and then charge you to tell you how much time what time it is. I am a geek. About 10 years ago, I hit my apex of my technical career, and I had to make that decision between going technical and staying technical or going management consulting. I went management. I don't use an e-reader because I'm old, and I like to touch books and write notes and stuff. This is a source of contention with my wife and I because every time we move, she has to pack this. I am prior military. I spent 10 years active duty in the Navy. Do we have any other veterans in the room? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your service. Now, as I'm in information security, I'm also a geek, and I'm a science fiction fan. I'm the guy in the white. Can you find me? Now, the one thing that I hate doing is I hate coming to conferences, and normally when I work with folks, I'm working with auditors and senior executives that like to see, pretty dashboards, and they like to see an alphabet behind your name. I hate going to security conferences and seeing all the certifications because really, I want to know what somebody can actually do. What have they done as a practitioner? So one evening, I got bored and started working my Scrabble magic to find out what exactly my certifications actually spelled, and it looks like part of it is off the side. However, if you realign my certification, I actually come out with GIC IT crimes, which being an InfoSec, I thought that was pretty cool. So what we're going to talk about today is information security. How many of you guys have seen this before? Sexy explosions, right? This looks really cool. This is what we put up in our SOC when our executives walk in to make us look like we're actually being productive, right? So great, ooh, amazing. And they give us budget. And then they go away and leave us alone so we can actually do our job. So this all started actually as a response to somebody who accused me of being a FUD peddler. And we'll get to that in a bit. But what I ended up deciding is when I started developing this and started building this as both a technical and a management program, had to answer some basic questions. So from a business perspective, what if I could get out in front of malware distribution? Anybody ever have to deal with malware? Couple of hands? Really? Okay, cool. Bulk spamming, nuisance scanners, command and control aspects. Anybody ever deal with that thing called phishing? Well, these are all great. And if we could get out in front of that, we can do some really great things to help our businesses. So quick today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the genesis of the how I built this program and how this presentation came to be. And this is an evolving presentation. It's changed a little bit since previous seminar or different conferences. But we'll cover the genesis, FUD. Anybody in here ever been accused of being a FUD peddler? Nobody?
What does that mean?
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The sky is falling. You're a narcissistic vulnerability pimp. None of those? I just have very similar. We tell our executives, we tell our management that this is bad stuff that's happening. We should be prepared. They don't understand it. we have to be able to make that link to them and be able to build that case. The statement that got me started with this was my comment around the Internet of Bad Things. That's a thing now, the Internet of Things. You know, you plug your light bulb in and now you can control it from 3,000 miles away because that is just cool, right? Like we have iPads. Building the threat intelligence program, what it actually means beyond the bits and bytes. Then some of my initial development and then the business value that this brings to an organization. So in the beginning, we had the internet, and Al Gore said it was good. So going back over some of my notes from as far back as 2010, some of the things that started coming up were, for a security practitioner who is as jaded as I am after doing this for almost 25 years, you know, who would attack us? We're in Ohio. Really, is that a good defense? Who would attack us? We make clothes. Again, these are things that business leaders, executives, and management were telling me and making the statements when I said, we need to start protecting our organization. A healthcare provider. We are too small to be on anybody's radar. What does that even mean? You're on the internet. We have nothing that anybody would want. Now, this is an interesting one because if you're in business and that's your defense, how are you in business? We don't have a large footprint. This was actually from a payment processor. Anybody in here use credit cards, little plastic things? Do you think criminal organizations would like to have those? Could be. So that got me asking one very, very drawn question, or making an actual statement. Whiskey, tango, and if anybody's in here in the military, we know what the next one's going to be, but we're going to go right back to the whiskey because I'm going to need to drink. Then, of course, one day I got accused of being a FUD peddler. Now, I know as a practitioner, bad things happen on the internet. They happen in business, they happen in real life. However, I didn't have any of the information available. So I started going back to the initial questions. Did people really believe that internet-based attacks were not a threat? Were they not of concern to them? Again, who would attack us? Again, the question of the statement of we're too small. Not having a large footprint. Why would anybody attack us? So my perception is that everybody was wearing rose-colored glasses that I was talking to, or maybe I needed to find a new career path. So for me, that became very clear what I needed to do. I was going to approach it from a very standard aspect. I'm going to put Oswald out on the internet, and I was going to document what happened to him. Document and basically track what happens from the time a system goes up online till the time it gets compromised. So on a Saturday afternoon, having a little bit of spare time, I threw it up online. But the question remained is, who would take the bait? So I was only running actually two services. I was running SSH and I was running an Apache web server. They were not hardened, but they were also not left to default. So a little bit minor modifications to actually replicate a real server. So 34 minutes after the first server came online is when I saw the first attack. But that's okay because they're from South Korea and they're our allies and we can trust that, right? So the first web attack came in just a little over a day later, but that's okay because they're from Texas and it could have been Jason who was trolling me. But again, I had to ask the question, why after just a very short time was this system being attacked? Now, I come from the aspect of, the system was put out there, but it was not submitted to, it wasn't given to Google, it wasn't given to Yahoo, Alta Vista. Is that even a search engine anymore? No. It was not part of any existing domain infrastructure, so it wasn't tied to anybody that would, it could correlate back to. It wasn't a new server that had come online. But most importantly, I just put it up online for that sheer purpose. Plus, after reading some of the logs, I'm almost certain, and I'm not a web app pen tester by trade, but I'm kind of certain that's not normal. Anybody in here do web app pen tests? Somebody? Is that normal? Is that a normal get? No? So after about 30 days of just monitoring, and I don't know how well you can see this, the red indicates secure shell attempts and where they came in. I did a little bit of geo-IPing. Again, I wanted to get an idea of where these attacks were coming from and how, after just putting the system up online, and this was just a residential IP to start off with. So we have all these things going on, but I live in Columbus, Ohio. And this all could be coincidence because we have some very large corporations in Columbus. So it could be that, you know, APT1 mistook my residential IP for nationwide, right? I hear that they're a little bit more skilled. Or that the Soviet crime syndicate thought that maybe I was, you know, the limited brands. Because coincidence happened. Unfortunately, I don't believe that. But here was the other aspect, and Andrew hit on this morning when he started talking about when he gave his information around the honeypots. Honeypots are very addictive. He was demonstrating the Kippo aspect. Well, I ended up coming across not only Kippo, which, by the way, is really fun to sit there on a Saturday night and watch some of the activity that goes on. But I also came across the Dionea honeypot, which allows you to run every type of service pretty much that you could want to configure. Now, what was really funny is when I originally did this, I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to tailor it and make it look like a Windows system, whether I was going to make it look like a Unix system. I got lazy and just left everything on. What's that? They didn't even notice. They didn't even notice. Yes. Because we run SSH services on our Windows platforms, right? Right. But one of the things that was really unique about both Kippo and with Dionea is it allows to collect things like malware samples, because they will shoot everything at you. You get to record all the sessions, and you'll be able to get to see what the attackers are attempting to do with it. Now, keeping in mind that I am a science fiction geek, one of the things that I asked myself is, what could I do with all this information that they were so lovingly giving us? Well, keep what you kill. So from a business aspect, I was able to gain intelligence around where the attacks were originating from, whether they were automated or if there was an actual person behind it. And again, Kippo is great for watching a automated script run, but it's even better when you sit there and you start seeing somebody backspace. Because then it's like, oh man, if I was on the terminal, I could start a talk session with them and hey, welcome, you're going to be in a presentation soon. Do you want attribution? Can I use you? I could also start tracking the historical progression of bad. How many times am I seeing this system? How many times is it coming up? What ports is it targeting? Is it part of something bigger? But I could also see, what is it that they were trying to do? Now again, because I am lazy, I have the benefit, I work with my partner, a gentleman by the name of Jake Williams, who is a reverse engineer freak. He loves to reverse engineer stuff, and because I'm lazy, I'll be like, hey, here's some code that got through that nothing else caught. Let's use this in our attack and pen place, so that way we don't have to come up with anything new. And he's like, no, we can't do that. I'll be like, please. But we can also start cataloging malicious software. That way, when we're responding to an incident for our organizations, we can actually start seeing, have we seen this somewhere else? So on to the Internet of Bad Things. So when the Internet originally started off, it started off as a little underfunded project out of California. Very small, easy to control. And this is where we've come at today. Now in 3-4 years from now, when we get IPv6 and our washing machines and our toasters are launching DDoS attacks, this is going to be a lot bigger. But then once we had this commercial development of the internet, it didn't take much time to see the criminalization aspect. And we started seeing things like this. You know, we can make money. Woo. Has anybody ever seen any of these types of emails that have come in? Spam, email? Do you guys want to know who the game changer was in all of this? Nunji Kumbatambo, the Nigerian prince. Now, if you're not aware of the fact, no matter how often I see it, I still see people still clicking the link and giving them money. You do not inherit the fortune. Totes real. Totes real. So let's talk about actually building a threat intelligence program. Now, before we get into it, let me talk a little bit about what it's not. It's not just Google. Okay? It's not the internet. It's not bits and bytes of IP addresses and domains. It's not collecting stuff and not doing anything with it. A lot of our organizations, we tend to be data hoarders, right? We have vast tons of data, but we don't do anything with it. Same thing with threat intelligence. If you're not doing anything with it, it's no good. Producing content that yields nothing of value. Now, when I started this off, we saw the presentation of the Norse threat status of the internet, the war games panel, right? Does that buy your organization, or does that buy you any specific value? Other than keeping you amused when you might be slightly intoxicated due to an adult beverage. What's the beverage?
Supports the budget.
Supports the budget. It's not meant to be a replacement for boots on the ground. Our security practitioners who are out there that are in the trenches, they still need to be there. Threat intelligence is good. This is meant to be a business enabler, an operational enabler as well. It is definitely not meant to be a replacement for network monitoring. So, you don't have to be a country and have billions of dollars to be able to have your own threat intelligence program. It helps. It keeps you out of trouble with the wife or the husband if you decide to do this on your own. And we'll get to how I got in trouble later. But what you do need is leadership's commitment and understanding. They need to understand that the threat to them is real. Whether it's the intellectual property that is managed and maintained by the organization, whether it's consumer data that they manage. Anybody in here deal with PCI? Couple? Health records? Intellectual property? Couple? These are all things that, depending upon the threat actor, these are the things that they're going to look at monetizing. Because the way an attacker looks at our assets and our systems within our business is totally different than the way our business leaders look at them. It's a 7-stage process with one very specific goal: to help leadership make an informed decision. And we do that so that way we can have a strategic advantage. That way we can take some action. And this life cycle runs all the way through, and it is a life cycle, and it's in a circle for a reason, because it's ongoing. This is not a one-and-done type of program. In fact, are there any vendors in the room, if I piss somebody off? Anybody that sells boxes? Okay, so after a couple of these conferences, I've had people who've actually come up and said, hey, this is really great. Can I buy the box that this comes on? Threat intelligence programs have to be built specific to your organization. There is no box. In fact, if a vendor comes up to you and says, we have a threat intelligence program for you, run. Because your business is going to be different than somebody else's. And they'll sit there and say, well, we can sell you a feed of IP addresses and domains. That's not threat intelligence. That's reputational database, or reputational screening. So when we talk about the intelligence universe, it's comprised of multiple facets. What we're going to focus on today are going to be those around human, internet, and automated systems. Now, automated, when I'm talking in this context, is going to be specific to the organization's infrastructure. So things that are internal and organic to your organization. So one of the things that we need to make sure is, when we're planning this out, is what is it that we want to accomplish? What do we want to be able to do? Well, ideally, we want to be able to make intelligent decisions. Even though sometimes it seems like folks just don't really want to make a good decision, being able to provide them the information will help them make a well-informed decision. Now, if you've ever dealt with the internet, anybody in here deal with that interweb thing? I hear it's a fad. Flash in the pan, maybe? We can get information from all over the place. The key aspect is going to be getting it and pulling it out of those little pockets and islands and being able to turn it into something that we can consume as an organization and that is usable to us. So from a collection standpoint, we want to make sure that we have access to it. Well, there are a number of places on the interweb, I'm not counting AOL, that we can pull information from. But some of the things that we have to be cognizant of is, things like, is it timely? Are we confident that the information that we're pulling is actually accurate? Is it being generated by a automated feed out of an appliance somewhere, or is somebody actually analyzing it? Does it have the sufficient detail that we need to be able to make decisions on? Is it just a list of IP addresses? Well, if it is that enough information? Well, if we just blindly block something, that may have significant impact. That may be beneficial for a financial institution that's regional that has no business talking to China, but what about an academic institution that's sharing research overseas? Now you've just blocked them and you've become that security guy that just stopped me from doing business. And security, we have that reputation already of we're the ones who are the business prohibitors. You always tell us no. We don't want to be that. And is it relevant? So the types of sources that we can get, you can pay for them. There's public, there's free. Free is in beer. Free beer is good. Are we that tired? No. Free beer is good. But you also have a human aspect to it as well. Information exchanges, organizations such as BSides, where you're sharing and collaborating on information, the contacts that you make. You may have a network that includes your competitors in business, but being able to share and exchange some information with them, hey, listen, we're an insurance agency, we just saw this type of attack occurring against us, you may want to prepare for it. And then your automated side, firewalls, honeypots, IDS, IPS, all the standard technical stuff that we've worked with previously. It's going to come in all types of formats. Everything from RSS feeds to rsync to getting that phone call. Hey, we just saw this. And when I say that it comes in all types, it comes in all types. I love text. Anybody in here love text? Text is a beautiful thing. So a lot of these are fairly open and able to be easily accessible. So why don't we use these to benefit us? Do we all have all the resources we need in our security departments? Is this something that we should be concerned about? Again, it all depends. I say yes. Having a threat intelligence program allows to make intelligent decisions, especially when you start talking specific to criminal and nation-state level threats. But I will tell you, parse it. Get the information out that you need that is applicable to you. Normalize it and get it moving. Validate the information. Are you seeing this just from one source? That could be an outlier or it could be a red herring. Assess it. Make sure that it is what you think it is and not just a stray attack. Putting it into categories. Is it a phishing campaign? Is it a known command and control? Is it something else? Being able to say exactly what it's going after or what it's aligned to will allow you to help your organization defend its intellectual property or find out. If you start seeing a specific threat actor that you know is going after cardholder data, you might want to step your defenses up. If you see a specific threat actor that's known for going after manufacturing materials and you're not in manufacturing, you may not be as concerned. Being able to categorize it will help in the aspect of getting the information out there. When we produce threat intelligence, one of the key aspects that we have to make sure is that we can act on it. Who's ever received a vulnerability assessment report that's like 2,500 pages long? Can we do anything with that? I would disagree. We can do something with that. We can check a box. We can make a nice little bonfire. We can make a brooch. We can make a hat. But it has to be actionable. We have to be able to do something. We should also consider the entire enterprise. If you have one office in one location, you may have some challenges here, but if you have a enterprise that spans multiple regions or multiple continents, what you see in one, you can easily leverage that to protect others within your organization, within the infrastructure. It's got to be flexible to the business needs. Why? Because geopolitical and locational politics change on a rapid basis. Company directions will change. Within something like a pharmaceutical company, they may be very, very hot about protecting their intellectual property up until when? When that product releases, right? Because once it goes public, people are going to be able to get it, and then they'll start reverse engineering it and building their own. So you must be able to remain flexible. Now, when it comes to disseminating threat intelligence information within the organization, really there's only two types of consumers. Uh-oh. I just got the battery low, so pardon me. We have two types of consumers of threat intelligence. You have the actual business, which I'll delve into later on in the presentation, and then the technical side, which is where a lot of us feel more comfortable at, right? We like dealing with bits and bytes and not so much with people. Now I feel really bad because I'm sitting here trying to get my power cord into a Mac. I've been in management too long. There we go. So from the technical side, what can we do? Well, we can affect changes within our ACLs, make changes to firewalls, update signatures, manipulate our local DNS so that way information going out, we can actually control whether or not it goes out to a known command and control. We can apply email filters, prevent those spam campaigns from impacting our users. Anybody ever work on a help desk where you get that phone call of, hey, I got this email and I clicked the link, is that bad? Is that a fun call to ever want to get? Because that usually means that your weekend is shot at that point. So threat intelligence allows us to take some preparatory actions. That way we can get out in front of some of these threats. We can preemptively mitigate. Okay, so great. We have a compromised host in the environment, but now we're able to implement a black hole that prevents them from communicating out. So now we can focus there. We can do enhanced monitoring. If we see an uptick and spikes into different areas, we can address, or we can start looking for very specific patterns and looking for very specific things. Is that a good thing? If you see the train's light coming at you when you're on the train tracks, is that a good thing? Because it tells us that we're able to get off the train tracks, right? Also, it allows for a very focused response. Now, when we start talking about incident response and forensics, why is that important, having a focused response capability? Anybody? Bueller? From a business aspect, if we're able to provide a precision pinpoint response to something, what have we just done? Saving money. Thank you. Not saving Private Ryan, saving money. So when I started all of this, coming up with the definitions or the actual program from the technical side, one of the things I started looking at was, how am I going to do this? I don't want to do this on without a budget, or because I told my wife, honey, I'm not going to spend any money this time. As you can tell by the rack at the very beginning, that lasted all of a week. So I started looking out there, and of course, your Linux and BSD distributions, are we familiar with Linux? Okay, I have to make sure because normally when I talk to auditors, they're like, there's something other than Windows. Robust platform support. I love this because people ask me, well, what the hell does that actually mean? It means it'll run on old hardware, which I like, because old hardware is cheap. Not only is it cheap, but from a business perspective, how many organizations have closets or old offices that they use to stage the hardware before they get rid of it, if they get rid of it? Again, we like to hoard things. Also, Unix has a lot of these easy-to-use native tools like, awk, sed, Perl, Python, all easy, right? Very easy to automate. There is no shortage of tools that you can throw onto a Nix distribution. Very highly customizable. So what I ended up doing with the Dioneo honeypot and the Kippo honeypot when I built this out is I ended up making little VMs or putting them on very small appliances and shipping them out or having people download them. So I started reaching out to my network throughout and ended up getting about 15 different systems out. Now, the one you see in Iowa is actually my grandmother, and I had her download this, which after 20 years of telling her not to click a link, having to tell her to go click the link, I got 15 minutes worth of my grandmother's, you've been telling me not to click the link for the rest of last, I'm your grandson, and her next question, I love this one, how do I know that? Wow, I need to go home more. But I had this distributed network where I had 15 different honeypots in geographically dispersed, which caused a new problem. So I had to get all the information back to one central location, which I called the Hive. Anybody know where this is from? Resident Evil. Okay, good. You can all keep your geek card. So when I was dealing with this geographically dispersed area, I needed to come up with some common naming conventions, give them unique identifiers, create a point where I could actually collect all the information and start massaging it locally so that way I could actually turn it into something actionable. Also used it as a way to manage how I manage my honeypots. So then I got this idea, and this was great because I don't know how well you can see that, not very well. Threat Intel people must like Neo, because didn't Andrew have the same issue this morning? So this was great until I had a colleague of mine who leaned over one day and he goes, Ed, this is great. He goes, I know you like text and you're fine at a command line. Most of us are pretty good at a command line. We're not afraid of it. Have you ever tried to set an executive down behind a dark, shining blinky? No, it doesn't work. So he's like, okay, so how are you going to fix that? Cool. We'll come up with the dashboard of things, bad things. Because management, we understand this, right? Pie charts, line graphs, and that's bad stuff. So I was able to also pull this in, and I was able to segment it. Now what's important is I was pulling information from various sources, but I was keeping it in the context of the honeypots that I had. So I knew which ones were emulating a Windows platform, which ones were supposed to be emulating a Unix-only platform. So I was able to actually context and contour the information specific to me. So I can take this information and I can sit there and say, ooh, okay, this is very specific to this system. And so I've taken the sexy explosions that the Norse gods have given us from the land of ice and snow, and I've actually turned it into something that is relevant to me and my organization. So ultimately, what the framework consisted of, when I started this proof of concept that cost me no money, that required me to go to Jared after several months of doing this, started being able to produce some very interesting things. So, of course, bad IP addresses and bad URLs, whoo, great, reputational. But I could also start looking at threat actor attribution. And now, when I'm saying attribution, I don't mean to a specific organization. I'm not talking Chuling or APT1. I could sit there and say, this is a nation-state level attack. This is a criminal attack. This is very specific, because they would do different things on the system. They'd leave different artifacts behind. Again, one of the benefits of working with my partner is because he's able to get to that level of detail, we could identify specific things to see what was going on behind the scenes. We could also identify common threat actors. In fact, and I don't have it in this presentation, but we were able to actually identify 8 very specific targets that were hitting all of the honeypots at one time, which was the outlier. Out of the several thousand that had been hitting on a regular basis, these 8 had been hitting just those honeypots instead of just hitting one at a time. So now I was able to take action on bad things. So now, this is why I had to go to Jared, because I'm on the 6th generation of this no-cost project of mine. And I really had to go to Jared because I was pulling in about 700 to 920 megs per hour, which, anybody in here watch Netflix? My wife loves Netflix because she can watch, Orange is the New Black, and she can catch up on all the other things. Yeah, so I had to explain this to her on more than one occasion. At which point, I ended up having to get a second IP, or a second drop at the house. So now I was able to look at this and say, okay, great, we have 2 aspects, 2 dimensions that I can work within. I can work within the strategic aspect, see who was interested in little old me. Start developing attack profiles. Identify different types of badness, whether they were opportunity scanners, malware, somebody who was just sitting there banging on a keyboard and found my IP address, plan mitigation efforts. But I was also able to take the information gathered from those honeypots, pull that back in, and start doing some things that I could actually take action on. Great, I see it, now I can do something with it. Of course, have to draw maps and dashboards. So, ran this total from 90 systems. Now, the 90 systems here are comprised of a lot of virtual systems, as well as some of my home systems, as well as I found out, some of my children's systems. I've got 4 children, ranging in age from 4 years old, which is the aww, to the soon-to-be 20 won't get out of my house yet because she's still in college, and I promised her as long as she was in college, I would take care of room and board. So over a 3-month period, I was able to pull all this information together because one of the things I do is I'm a logging fiend, and log everything is good. Well, what I discovered when I started going through was that 28 bad domains had been identified through various sources, independent of my honeypots, independent of what the direct systems that I had control over. When I found out, some of them were based upon the fact that they were short URLs, which I had built a rule to say if it's a short URL, flag it, because I wanted to have the ability to go back in and do some analysis around it. However, when all said and done, 3 required additional looking into, and they were rather unique because they were drive-bys and embedded iframes that would take you multiple deep into other domains. When it came to IP addresses, I found 446 calls out to something that was questionable. And when I traced it down, my lovely, soon-to-be 20-year-old daughter had some really interesting web visiting habits, which then spawned a discussion around the expectation of privacy in the McCabe household. And a little bit of education around the fact that packets don't lie and daddy monitors everything. But back to the original questions. So the who, when, and why. Who would attack us? We're in Ohio. Well, what I was able to discover was that if you're on the internet, you're a target. And now I have quantifiable information that I can sit there and go, yeah, okay. So where's the guy who accused me of FUD? Okay, here's pointy stick, stab, stab, stab. Not big enough to be on anybody's radar, not a large footprint. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. If you have an IP address with a service listening, or even if it's not listening, it is subject to being probed, scanned, violated, and other things. Why would anybody attack us? Again, this goes back to a concept of criminal currency that the way we view our assets, the way our executive leadership and our managers view them, is totally different than the way that a criminal organization will look at them. They're going to look at it as far as not what information they may necessarily be able to take off, but what information they can sell off or how they can use it to make money, whether that's through Bitcoining, turning your systems into slaves to Bitcoin, to setting up a web server and hosting malicious software, spam relays, you name it, they're going to find a way to make money off of you. So ultimately, coming back into the fact of what I accomplished. Again, being able to go through and quantify bad things on the internet, that's a shocker to everybody in here, right? If you're on the internet, you are a target. And the ability that you can leverage public sources to increase your security posture. Now, from the business side of the house, and I will get all serious here in a second, threat intelligence can be leveraged in a business aspect. Because now you can start assessing some very specific things. Who is coming after me? Why are they coming after me? Where are they coming from? Now, anybody ever been overseas, specifically like to China? Okay. Where's Jason at? I'm back. What do they have in the airports, in the executive lounges that are free for use? Free Wi-Fi as well as what?
I'm not fancy enough to get into the airplane.
I heard you kind of do social. No. They have free photocopiers. So I tell people, you know, when you're traveling overseas, you know, if it's free and it sounds too good to be free, don't use it. And I've briefed a number of executives on this, and one morning I get a phone call from one of my clients, and they're like, Ed, you were right. Okay, about what? Oh, they had free copiers in the airport lounge. What did you copy? Oh, I didn't copy anything. What did you copy? Really, serious, I didn't. What did you copy? Well, it wasn't anything critical. It was only our forecast for next quarter. Everything that can collect information is going to be used and leveraged. It may not be something that they act on immediately, but they will gather it. Being able to answer how they're coming after me and how to be able to protect yourself, these are other areas that you can actually look at. So we get into the aspect of why now? Why is it now that we're only hearing about threat intelligence, and why is it the new buzzword of the industry? And I'm waiting for the next gen threat intel anti-APT thing to come out across, because I know it's coming. Well, the reason is because we're starting to see more and more sophisticated attacks, and they are going after the purpose of making money. Or in some cases of nation states, they are actually going after gaining a competitive edge. We need to be able to learn how to protect ourselves. One of the ways we can do that is see the oncoming train. These threats are nothing new. Criminals have been stealing since the dawn of time. Nation states have been spying and conducting espionage since the beginning of time. This is nothing new. They will require that we change the way that we operate. Oh, I am running behind. The loss of our brand image. That was my timer. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? I should be able to do 10 slides in 5 minutes. So the impact of our brand image and the loss of competitive edge can actually be the cost a lot more than the actual incident itself. Incidents take time to recover, more so the brand image of the incident. Do you think Target and Home Depot are having a really good time right now? Goodwill, JP Morgan Chase? You know, that's going to take a lot of time. Also, the Hollywood romanticized hacker doesn't exist anymore, in that this isn't who's breaking into our systems and pilfering our data. And when I was talking earlier about the criminal currency, have you guys seen this before? Brian Krebs put this out. He let me use this. This is the value of a hacked PC to a criminal. And we see multiple dimensions across the board on why a criminal would want to have your asset. You may think that your assets are worthless to anybody except for your organization because you're unique. A criminal is going to look at it and try and figure out a way to make money off of it. So they may turn around and turn it into a kiddie porn website. How would you like to come in on a Monday morning and find out that the Secret Service is there hauling off components of your data center because the IP address is in your DC? Might be a bad day, right? Stealing corporate email information? That would never happen, right? Our good friends at Adobe made sure that that wasn't going to be a problem. Anybody got hit with CryptoLocker? So ransomware, can we make money off of that? Can a criminal organization make money off of that? I can guarantee you they have. Financial theft, breaking into an ATM. Who brought the ATM this morning to hack into? I love that. Bring an ATM in. You brought it in?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think he's still out there with it.
Is he still out there with it? Break into an ATM. How often do you get to do something like that? That is cool. Sorry, I get giddy on the technical side. You know, turning systems into Bitcoin miners. You know, these are things that criminal syndicates are looking at doing. Nation state and threat actors of the aspect of reputational hijacking and taking over an organization's brand. Who remembers the tweet that went out that said 2 explosions at the White House, Obama injured? Do you know what happened immediately after that with the Dow Jones? How many billions of dollars were lost just from a tweet? This has gone from being cyber to being, no kidding, real world impacting in the real world. Credentials, botnets, gotta love them. Again, criminals will find a way to make money off of your assets, and it probably isn't going to be the way you think. Quick overview of a standard attack cycle. From the definition of a target to researching of the target. That is outside of our organization's control. The remaining 8 areas, we actually have control over. We can either change or continue to play the victim. I love hearing every time we hear a new breach, what's the first thing that the organization says? APT, right? It was an APT style attack. Home Depot was actually kind of unique because they've gone through the trifecta. First it was an APT attack, which I was like, really? Okay. Then it was a third-party vendor. Does anybody know what their latest claim of why they were breached? Microsoft Windows. I was like, really? Serious? That's okay. So with threat intelligence, we're able to disrupt the attack chain. We can get out there and start looking to see if people are actually starting to look from us from known scanners, from opportunistic scanners. We might be able to do that. From a delivery aspect, we can then correlate whether or not we're receiving emails from known phishing campaigns, known syndicates. Has something malicious showed up on our network that we have documented or that somebody else has seen maybe? Do you think if the financial institutions had been sharing information around Zeus that it wouldn't have been as impacted as they were? Maybe. Are we beaconing out to somebody else? Now, when we build this for the business, first thing we've got to do is be able to define that value. We've got to gain the executive buy-in and have them understand. A lot of times, when we go to management and our leadership and say, we need budget, we need to spend this, we don't often justify or quantify for them the necessity. 80% of my time is normally tied up and associated with educating leadership and management on why this is important to them. This is what they can lose. Are they okay with that? Are they okay going back to their board of directors and saying, we decided not to protect it because it's not PCI data, or it's not protected data, or it's not regulated data? Again, becoming a business enabler. How am I doing on time? Am I over? 1 minute, okay. 7 slides in 1 minute. 3 of those are going to be informational only. Becoming the business enabler, taking the information we have to help the organization be able to make decisions, being able to disrupt the adversary, protecting our business. Now, we do that by enhancing those operations that we're already doing. Increasing situational awareness of the organization. Who's coming after us? Why are they coming after us? What is it that we have? Can we protect that a little bit better? Ultimately, this all comes down to and boils down to when we start looking at maximizing defensive capabilities, focused response, prioritizing limited resources. Where's the big value add for the business on all of this? Can anybody tell me? It's already been said once before.
Bottom dollar.
Bottom dollar. You're going to be like my A student. So again, providing all of this in a context that the organization can understand, as well as being able to understand that context is king. Now, when I say that, what I'm talking about is you have to know your environment. How many of you maintain asset inventories? A couple? Can you protect what you don't know about? Kinda? Fair enough. I'll give you that. Normally, we want to know what we have in our environment because that's what we can protect. If we don't know about it, we can't protect it. It's going to be that old NT system that's sitting out there still on the internet running IIS. That's going to be the attack vector, and we have no visibility into that. Threat intelligence also plays into your vulnerability and your configuration management aspects. If you can harden systems to protect against specific attack threat actors, then you can reduce your threat surface and your threat profile. Also knowing your customers and folks who actually rely on your network. Real quick, common challenges to threat intelligence programs. The number one being capitalism. We're our own worst enemy. And of course, our fun-filled friends in general and legal counsel, right? Because they're always saying, yes, let's share all this information. We also don't want to be perceived as being weak. You know, oh, okay, we got attacked. Well, everybody's getting attacked. The criminal underground, the criminal syndicates are sharing information with each other, and we're having a very difficult time sharing information with our fellow professionals. Again, lack of support of the infrastructure, we have to be able to have something, so you might need a little bit of a budget. But you don't need multi-billion dollars, and you don't need to build a data center out in Utah to do it. Ultimately, it's going to come down to having the support and commitment of the leadership. And with that, here's my contact information, should you have any questions. BSidesCHS, thank you very much.